to talk about how our children are dealing and managing with these uncertain times and how, as parents, you can support them best. So, lots of the conversations I've been having this week and the past couple of weeks are some behavioral issues that parents are having to manage with their kids, range in usually like under 13, so younger children. And it being really difficult to manage some of the behavioral changes, whether that's disrespect or just being not motivated or not engaged or not listening as much. Um, and so I just wanted to hop on here and talk a bit about kids. So, what the first thing to remember is that, especially in dealing with your own children, is that you often forget how young they actually are, and you see all their potential and you see how smart they are and how amazing they are. And what happens is then you start to put adult thoughts on them in the sense that you think that they think like adults. And then what you do is you will sometimes jump to a conclusion about their behavior as if they're adults. And we often forget that kids are not adults. They don't have the brain development, they don't have the social development, and that they've only really been on this planet for however long however their age is. So if they're 10 years old, then they've really only been on this planet for 10 years. Now, I don't know about you, but if you think back to your own life of only been on this planet and alive and learning and processing for 10 years, you don't really know very much. So one of the biggest problems or challenges that comes with parenting is because you know how smart your kids are and you see their potential, is that you start to attribute adult thinking to them. But here's the truth, is that that's not how the brain works. In brain development for children, they're constantly looking for loopholes. Now, sometimes as adults, we'll look at kids and we'll think that they're manipulative or they're just being really hard or difficult or they're not listening, all these things that we attribute to their behavior as something that's wrong or something that's bad. But in brain development, it's actually they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So in brain development, children are supposed to be trying to find the cracks in their parenting, in the parents. They're supposed to try to find a loophole wherever they possibly can. That's how they develop their brain. That's how they learn how to problem solve. That's how they learn about boundaries. That's how they learn about who they are, what they like, what they don't like. It's in relationship with their primary caregivers. And that's going to be you as a parent. So they need to test you and they need to push because that's what the brain actually needs in order to develop and to grow as fast as possible. Now, I know as a parent, it's probably going to drive you crazy. And you are very irritated by it. It becomes a really big challenge, especially in a time when we're all stuck at home and kids are not in school, so they don't have that stimulation. So that's the second thing to remember, is that you are like our children are living in a time that we didn't grow up in ourselves, and even our parents didn't grow up in. So they're living in a time in history that none of us have done before. So they don't have the stimulation of learning at school. They don't have the peer engagement that they typically would get in social connection. They're not playing outside as much. So there is this stuntedness that's happening in their development, their brain development. Now, we all have to do it, which is fine. But I want you to understand that this is why kids are struggling a bit. And this is why you're probably seeing some behavior, is because they are completely out of their norm. And what's happening is that they're not learning and growing the way that they're supposed to and what they're used to. So their behavior will come out sideways because they're looking for other ways to learn. Now, again, in brain development, children need this. They need stimulation, they need new experiences, they need to touch things and smell things and do all the things that kids do, because this is how their brain evolves and develops into adulthood. So they're not being annoying on purpose and they're not testing your buttons just to test your buttons. What they're doing is they are moving through development as best as they can, and in a time that we're all really struggling with. And they don't really understand what's happening. I mean, we can give them words and concepts and we can describe it as much as possible, but to have a full understanding of what's happening, it actually requires higher development learning. So it needs abstract thought. And some kids are not in that place to even understand that. So we can tell them stories, we can tell them what's happening, but it doesn't actually mean they really get it. So just as, their birthday comes once a year and you can say, well, it's 4 months away. Do they really understand what 4 months is in the same way that adults do? No, many don't. And it's not because they're not smart, it's because their brain isn't in that place yet. So having abstract thoughts is really difficult. So when we say things like, this is what we're doing for now with no timeline. When we were saying like, we're not really sure if you're going to go back to school, what that's going to look like. There's all this uncertainty, and we expect them to understand what this means. But the truth is, we don't even understand what this looks like. We don't even understand what this means for our lives. So we can't expect them to understand it. So I want you to sit in a place of trying to engage with your kids in a way that you can celebrate their efforts to find learning and trying to find cracks in the system and trying to get their needs met, whichever way that they need to, and not sitting in a place of seeing it as kind of on purpose crappy behavior, basically. I mean, they still have to have rules and still have to be respectful. I get it. But it's about growing your own patience in a time when we're all lacking patience because we are frustrated that we don't have the answers. We're frustrated because we don't know. We're frustrated because of the uncertainty that we're living in. So imagine their frustration, their uncertainty, and their anxiety when they see the adults in their lives feeling anxious about not knowing what's going to happen. So um, just remember that kids are doing what kids are meant to do, and their brain is meant to develop this way. Their brain does not develop in just following rules all the time and not pushing boundaries. I hate to say it, it's really annoying. I get it. But that's not how kids grow. It's not how they develop who they are. It's not how they develop skills or any kind of thought process or identity, is just following the rules. They develop all those things, the things that you want for your kids to be these amazing adults. They develop it because they are constantly pushing the boundaries as much as they possibly can. And now that they're in your face all the time, it's probably really difficult. So this is about you finding some understanding, hopefully, and some patience for yourself as a parent, that you also haven't parented in pandemic before, and this is all new to you, and it's all new to everybody, and that maybe you can give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of break as well. So I hope you found this a little bit helpful, and I hope you enjoy some really great coffee today.